Now it's my good fortune to introduce our Pioneer Award winner. This honor is reserved for someone who lives the spirit of our mission, but didn't actually graduate from National Louis. We're proud to present the Pioneer Award this year to an individual who has dedicated his life to advancing educational opportunities for every child, Arne Duncan. I'll be brief so Arne has more time. From volunteering as a teenager in his mother's after-school program for underprivileged youth, to becoming CEO of Chicago Public Schools from 2001 to 2008, and serving as our nation's Secretary of Education from 2009 to 2015. Arne has championed high standards for all students and also innovative programs that advance student success from early childhood through college. Mike Holdyke and I remember Arne before he was CEO of CPS. He was the go-to guy if you wanted to get something done that would be really hard and would take a diverse group of people coming together to accomplish it. So Arne was that guy then, and it's very clear as he advanced through his positions with CPS and as our nation's Secretary of Education, he excelled at doing just that, bringing us together around this important common cause that we all share. It's great to have Arne, his wife Karen, his daughter and son back here in Chicago. He is now a partner at the Emerson Collective, focused on providing job opportunities here for some of the most disadvantaged young people who are not currently in school, old enough to have a job but don't have one, and may have criminal records. That's a really tough task, but one that is so vital for our city and nation to take on. Arne's also going to continue to be a national voice for education innovation, including as a fellow of the Brookings Institution. Ladies and gentlemen, our 2016 National Louis University Pioneer Award winner, the guy who's leading the charge on this great cause for all of us here tonight, the Honorable Arne Duncan. Arne, great to have you here.
Thanks so much.
You bet.
Well, thank you so much. I'm thrilled to be here. Scott's a good friend. What I was saying to him and his wife earlier is that, it was my job to work in Chicago Public Schools and others, and it was a great passion, but that was not Scott's job. And to have someone in his position as a civic leader and working in Chicago Public Schools is not easy for those of you that have done it. But to have someone of his stature and his position with Mike Holdyke and others roll up their sleeves and partner with us, challenge with us, but partner with us in a very, very significant way year after year after year was extraordinary. So please give Scott a big round of applause for all of his leadership. I just want to say three quick things. It's been an amazing evening. I think anything I'll say will be anticlimactic compared to what we heard earlier. It's very, very powerful stories you heard. First, just want to thank the NLU family for the focus on access, on affordability, and at the end of the day, completion. And what's at stake, and obviously I'm preaching to the choir in a room like this, for young people who don't have a college degree today, life is very, very hard. And having a college degree is not a ticket to guaranteed success, but it puts you in the game. And we have so many young people in Chicago and across the state and across the nation where that opportunity is pretty distant, where it's pretty hard to get there. Don't have family members who have done it. Money's a big challenge. And we need people to be reducing their tuition, as you guys are doing. We need people building systems of support. Again, the goal is not to go to college. The goal is to graduate and walk across stages like this. And we have to get better faster. We have to innovate, as Scott talked about. We have to get more young people across. There's always a good news and a bad news story in education. The good news is over the past 2 decades, we have doubled the number of Black and Latino young people with college degrees. That's the good news. Don't clap. Hold on. Let me keep going because it's tough. The bad news is over the past 2 decades, In the Latino community, we've doubled from 8 to 15%. In the black community, from 13 to 23. And so the question for all of us, are we going to sit here in 2036 and say we are heroes because now a third of Latinos in our nation have access to college, and still less than half? That pace of change is not good enough. And so folks who will accelerate, folks who will challenge the status quo, folks who will create more opportunity in underserved communities, we have to help them grow. Ultimately, we want the United States to lead the world in college completion rates. Today we're 12th. That's not something we should be proud of. And other nations are out innovating, they're out educating, and the pace of change has to become more rapid. So we need places like NLU to break the mold and try and think very differently. Secondly, just want to take a moment on to focus on education and teachers. Obviously, that's one that's very, very close to my heart. And I think we just have to be explicit in these conversations. And I'm going to, Dr. Samuel talked a little bit about it, but we can't talk about going to work in education today, or frankly ever, if we're not willing to talk about race and class, and opportunity or lack thereof, and privilege and lack thereof. And the fact of the matter is that we live in a state that is one of the most unequal systems of funding in the nation. And if you're lucky enough to be born 4 or 5 miles north of us in Winnetka, Wilmette, you get twice as much money spent on you each year than children here in Chicago. And not surprisingly, children in Wilmette, Winnetka are largely white and largely wealthy. And not surprisingly, 80 to 90% of the young people in Chicago public schools are black and brown and poor. And so we can't talk about these things without putting race and class and inequity and disparity front and center. And the goal is not for teachers to come in and just get a little bit better. The goal is to challenge the status quo, a system that is fundamentally broken, that I would say is morally indefensible. And we need to be equipping leaders not to be great English teachers, not to be great math teachers, that's important, be champions of this movement for fundamentally challenging the status quo and making sure that every single young person, regardless of Lawndale or Englewood or Austin or in rural America or on Native American reservations, has access to the best. And so the goal for NLU and for everyone else is not for me to produce teachers, it's to produce extraordinary teachers and leaders. And it always amazes me that too often in education circles, folks try and diminish the importance of great teaching. I would argue there's nothing more important. And great teachers transform kids' lives. Great teachers have transformed all of our lives here, or we wouldn't be in rooms like this. And we can all point back to our teachers in elementary and middle school and high school who did that. And so the goal for me is never volume, it's never quantity, it's quality. And what NLU can do to challenge the status quo, frankly, among schools of education, and to talk boldly about how important excellence is in education, and how transformative great teachers are, and to hold yourselves accountable for having your teachers not just enter the profession ready to be successful, but to grow and to be the kind of leaders who you see across this room. And so the opportunity for NLU to lead that national conversation and to challenge the status quo there, I think is both huge and desperately needed. And the final thing I'll say, it's been, for me, a very bittersweet time coming home. It's fantastic to be home, fantastic to be home with my family, and got a bunch of friends from high school going back a long time now at this point here, and great to see them and catch up with so many of you. And that part feels wonderful. But as you heard passionately and eloquently from Dr. Sam and others, this is just a very, very tough time for our city. And if we don't collectively address the issue of violence that is tearing apart families and communities in our city, that is damaging our city's reputation nationally and internationally, we're not doing enough. And again, I think we have to put sort of race and class on the table, that if we look at the facts, the vast majority of those being shot and the vast majority of those shooting are young men of color, predominantly young black men, 17 to 24. And for all of the collective amazing work that everyone around this room is doing, if we're very honest with ourselves, our collective response to the magnitude of the problem is tiny, is woefully insufficient. And I am convinced we can't police our way out of this, we can't arrest our way out of this, we can't tase our way out of this. We have to compete with the gangs. We have to create jobs and opportunities on the South and West Side. Young men today, I'm convinced, are making pretty rational choices to go with the gangs and sell drugs because they don't have other alternatives. And that is not up to the police. Police have a role to play, that's not up to them. So for all the great work that everyone around here is doing, I would ask you just to challenge yourself and think about individually and collectively, how do we do more, not just to help the community, not just to help neighborhoods, but to very specifically help young men and young men of color and young black men at 17 to 24 age group who have not had all of the opportunities, who have not gone to the best of funded schools, who may not have the most functional families. But if we don't give them something else to do, our city will continue to struggle. But I think there's a moment of, in crisis comes opportunity. There's a moment of opportunity, a moment of truth here that I think if we can come together, we can radically, radically change this. And the benefits for young people, for families, for communities, ultimately for our city, I think is extraordinary. And champions like Dr. Sandy are going to help us get there. Thank you so much. Thank you for having me tonight.